Thank you. Now Mr. Agnew, followed by Mr. Häusling.
I would like to support everything that Mairead McGuinness said. In addition to that, there is an element of moral blackmail on politicians here, that if you object to anything to do with more legislation on animal welfare, you're somehow a wicked and an evil and a cruel man. And one has got to just stand back and be sensible about the whole thing. In the United Kingdom, maybe we are unique in we have this store trade for sheep, in as much that many of the lambs are born in the north of Scotland, and they do very well there in the summer months where the evenings are long, but in August the grass starts to stop growing, and these lambs have to move somewhere else for further fattening, which usually means the south of England, and it takes a lot longer than 8 hours to get there, because you have to consider that we're not talking about autoroutes and autobahns and motorways. We're talking about very narrow, twisty, hilly roads in Scotland where a lorry makes very slow progress and might only cover 30 miles in an hour at best. And then, of course, the driver has his stops. So I don't think that 8 hours is enough, and the rapporteur was talking about special measures, and I think this must be a case for that. Mrs. Jeggle did touch on transporting poultry, and this is something we do in the dark, because the poultry just go to sleep. And if you can do that in the dark, it makes a huge difference. It really does take away most of the problems. I would agree that loading and unloading is very stressful. These animals, when once they're on the lorry and it's ticking along, going along, unless the driver really slams the brakes on or drives in a highly reckless way, the animals are reasonably comfortable. But if you stop and unload them, and particularly load them up again, they run around, there's all the noises. That is a stressful activity. The rapporteur mentioned restricted market. You can only sell within so many miles of where the animal was produced. Well, this is a recipe for a monopoly, and you have no choice. Your animals have to go to that abattoir, and they will simply push the price down because they know you can't send them anywhere else. Multi-decks were mentioned. I mean, these are used a lot in the United Kingdom. It was in the 1980s that we put roofs over them. I mean, Mrs. Jeggle was talking about bridges and having to unload the top deck, etc. Certainly in the United Kingdom, double-deckers for cattle, quadri-deckers for sheep can get under all standard bridges. There isn't a problem with that. I just want to make some personal observations as somebody who farmed sheep for many years and still does, but particularly these stall lambs. Animals, ruminants, travel better empty, better without any food in their stomachs. I know people feel, yes, you should fill them up with food and water before the journey. It obliges them to go into the rumination process and all the filth and mess, etc., that's left in the lorry. I always felt that if I took delivery of store lambs that had been in a market where they had allowed themselves to get empty, and they came down to me from Scotland, they ran off the lorry as bright as buttons and started eating. Those that came off a lorry where they'd obviously been fed and water before they were put on it, they were in a mess. There are some basic rules to follow here, which has nothing to do with journey time. Don't load weak animals. Don't load them. That is, in my opinion, a criminal thing to do, because they will fall down in the lorry, get underneath other animals, and they get trodden to death. That's a simple rule. Another one is load evenly sized batches. All these lorries have compartments on them. Don't load very small animals with very big ones. I know it's common sense. The same applies to horns. For some reason, some farmers feel it's fashionable to use breeds that have horns. The pole gene is always a stronger gene than the horn gene. We should be getting rid of horns. They're just a damn nuisance. And if you're somebody who deals with sheep quite a bit, as I used to, and they're in a race and you're trying to dose them, part of the male anatomy doesn't like sheep's horns, I can promise you. But that's something that is certainly in the case of transport. There again, you've got pregnant animals, animals giving birth on a lorry. I mean, just don't do it. So I hope that some common sense does prevail in this, but so much of this is to do with attitude. Thank you.